Hey folks, welcome back to our Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark.
And I'm Randy.
Today we're taking a look at the Silver River.
The Silver River is brought to you by Boardgame. It plays 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, and each game takes between 90 minutes and 120 minutes to play.
Great, well let's go explore the galaxy. The Silver River, otherwise known as the Milky Way, has a secret at its center. There's a black hole of unknown origin known as Sagittarius A. And several ships have gone missing looking for a mysterious anomaly out in the center of our galaxy. Now, this has left our population of Earth very uneasy. However, scientists have been reassuring us that really there's nothing to worry about. There could be all kinds of new planets to discover, all kinds of new materials to find. There's nothing like terrifying space monkeys to be had, but we're going to go explore anyway, so come along with us.
The Silver River is a 4X game. Now, many of you may be used to 4X games that last from 4 to 6 hours.
Or longer.
Or potentially much longer. But the Silver River allows you to get that fix in a much shorter period of time, between an hour and a half and 2 hours. Now, this is played during the course of 4 ages. And during those 4 ages, you will explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate, all in an effort to get the most victory points. So when you start the game, you will set up these hexes into a game board based upon the number of players playing. Now, when Mark and I played, you'll see our home worlds on opposite sides of this galaxy. But if you have more players, you'll also set up additional home worlds for each of the additional players. Then each player will choose a race. There are a variety of races to choose from, and each race has a unique benefit. So you want to keep that in mind as you're choosing a race. It also allows for a lot of replayability.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Once each player has chosen a race, they will be given a race-specific board that allows them to keep track of the number of ships in their fleet and also provides a little bit of a reference here to remind you of what actions you can take on each of your turns. Each player will also be given a production board so they can keep track of, using these cubes, keep track of how their production is distributed into specific production areas. And they'll also be given a tech board and a set of tech cards through which they can develop their own tech tree. And this allows for a lot of uniqueness in each game.
Absolutely.
Because how you pursue your investment might make you more military-based, more civilization-based, and so forth. So this can be a very interesting thing to explore in each game.
I think that's really interesting. Like a lot of these types of games that you can really just change up how you play each time. Because this time I'm all about civilization. However, this time I'm all about destroying all of Randy's ships with my military might.
Or just fighting the monsters.
Or fighting them
out of the black hole. So each player will be given this basic tech board as well as these 2 different decks of tech cards they can invest in. They'll be given a stack of these cubes in their color. A set of these exploration tokens so they can keep track of what sectors they've explored. Some of these trade stations. Also a deck of personal objectives. Now we talked about the whole goal of this is to get the most victory points.
Right.
At the beginning of the game, each player will choose from this fairly large deck a set of 5 cards that they will be pursuing throughout the game, and they will keep these secret, at least until they've achieved any of the immediate objectives. If there's an objective on one of these cards that say immediate, once you've achieved it, you will turn it over and it will be public. If there's an in-game condition here, you'll keep that secret until the very end of the game.
And what's interesting here, again, is that these cards might dictate your path throughout the game.
Right.
So if you pick all military, well, obviously you know what your focus is for your tech tree, right?
Yeah, and you'll want to keep this in mind since it's a fairly short game terms of compared to most 4X games, and it's only played across these 4 ages. You want to keep these in mind because you need to be very focused in exploiting these things or pursuing these things.
Definitely, it's interesting to try to play as a jack of all trades. It does work. Yeah. But I feel like the focusing is really the path.
I think it really is, yeah. And as you do that, these complement other ways of getting victory points. So in addition to your personal objectives, there are also these public objectives which you can pursue as well. But these aren't the only ways to get victory points. We'll talk about them more in a bit. After all players have done that, you will set up a few last things. You'll give each player a tactics card and set the tactics deck near the board. You'll also set the explore deck near the board, and you will choose a monster. You'll actually choose 5 different monsters. So each of these monsters have different levels that you will encounter throughout the game. So if you want to pursue that, the monsters are there. You can go hunting for bear if you arm your fleets enough. But if you don't, beware, you can lose your fleets in the process.
All right, so as you'd expect, this is a big 4X expansive game. A lot going on here, more than we can cover in this video. So we're going to give you kind of a broad overview, just a sense of what to expect. Now, as Randy said, every game is divided into 4 ages, and those ages have 3 phases per age. So the phases we're going to look at first are the production and the govern phase. And the reason we're going to talk about these together is they kind of work together.
They do.
In some ways. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to gather cubes into your raw production area on your board. And you'll do this numerous ways, right? You're going to get cubes from your population on planets. You're going to get from
your trade stations, yep.
Yep. And from title cards, as well as certain technologies may give you cubes as well. Then in the govern phase, you're going to take your screen and cover your whole production board so the other players at the table don't know where you're going to spend your resources. You're going to take all the cubes in your raw production area and you're going to distribute them to all the different production areas that you want to focus on in this next age.
The third phase of each age is the action phase, and during this phase there are a number of rounds during which each player will either perform a turn or they will pass. Now, when they perform a turn, they will get to spend cubes from one of the 4 different specific production areas. And they can perform any number of actions using those cubes, but they can only spin cubes from the one they've chosen. Now, when the round comes back around to them, they can spin from one of the other ones, or they can continue spinning from the one they've chosen before. However, they can only spin, during a turn, they can only spin from one. The alternative is that a player passes. And once they pass, they can no longer perform any actions during this phase. When they pass, the benefit of that is they get to move their cube one space up on one of the 4 different domestic investment tracks. And when they do that, they get a variety of bonuses. Usually what these map to is a specific one-time bonus of a production type. So for example, if you moved it up, the first one on the arts is a political production token. Now, when it comes back around to that player, if other people are still taking actions, that player can no longer perform actions, so they get to pass again. And so they get to move this up and continue to get bonuses until all players pass. And once all players pass, that particular phase is over.
Now, like Randy said, you're going to use these cubes in all kinds of different ways to explore this galaxy. First, let's take a look at the technology tree. This is where you're going to either add or make your areas of influence more efficient. And one of the things I liked is the fleet upgrades, right? Because you get those super powerful weapons for taking on monsters or wiping out other players' ships. Some of my favorite parts of the game, right? So, but this tree is really what is going to help you enhance what you're doing or what you're focusing on in this game. And you will pay the cost in the bottom right corner of the card in order to put it into play. But you also have to be aware that there are different levels and you have to progressively move through the level of technology that is required. There's also military, right? You're going to either be building more ships, which is critical to enhance your fleets, especially if you're focusing on military. And then you can explore the galaxy, move your ships out, explore, and find all kinds of neat things. And what's cool is that when you do explore, the card typically gives you multiple things that you can do.
Yeah, it's very thematic.
It's like you might find a base station that's been derelict for thousands of years, and you can harvest all its material to make more ships, or you might renovate it to make it a trade station. There's just lots of different possibilities in these Explore cards. And of course, you can use your military to go into battle. And there's dice that you're going to be rolling against. And again, based on how you upgraded your tree, your tech tree will determine what dice will hit when you attack. And as you progressively get those weapons bigger and better, it really makes a huge difference in these battles.
Yep. There are a couple of other production types that you can spin to perform different types of actions. One of those is the civilization production type, and you will spin these to colonize new planets and also increase population on those planets. Now, most of these planets have max population limits, but depending upon how you increase your tech tree, you can increase those limits, and you can also improve the efficiency with which you colonize and populate those planets. Keep in mind that the population you have on those planets will determine your production in the next age. The last type of production that you can spin to perform actions is the political production types. You're saying, well, politics, what role does politics have in this? Actually, there's some really interesting things you can do here. The first is you can call for an election, and you can spin these cubes after anyone can call for election, but you can spin these cubes to do a blind vote, to vote for either yourself or other players, and whichever player gets the largest number of cubes voted for them, they can take on one of these 3 roles. So you would call for an election for any one of these or any number of these. You can do it all three in one turn if you'd like. The galactic leader gets some additional political production each turn. He also gets to break ties. The spy master gets an additional tactical card. We'll talk about those in a second. And the trade leader gets additional raw production at the beginning of each production phase. So there are reasons you might have those roles, just like in real life. There's a reason you might want to be governor, or as they say, it's good to be the king. Another thing you can do with your political resources is you can build these wonders. And these wonders can come into play because they have sometimes race-specific benefits, but the Pleasure Dome, for example, lets you protect your planet from invasion because nobody wants to bomb a mall.
That's right.
Or hopefully not. If people benefit from it, they tend not to attack it.
That's right.
And the last thing you can do is you can actually spend these production resources to buy tactics cards. These tactics cards can be very useful. Sometimes they have an instant value. Sometimes they have an action-related value. But sometimes you can turn these into things like immediate production resources. So don't neglect the tactics cards.
Right, and they even have simple things like re-rolling as well.
Exactly.
So they might be good to hold on to and save you in a battle.
Yeah, especially if you're battling one of these big monsters. And we should also mention, before we forget, that battling a monster, if you defeat it, all players who are involved in defeating a monster actually gets the benefits listed on the card.
Which is great. So you can pull everybody in. Hey, you want to help me with this battle? Because, I don't have the best of weapons.
Right. So players on adjacent sectors can join in the battle, and anybody who helps defeat the monster actually gets part of the reward.
And of course, they also get the negative effect.
They do get the negative
if you are defeated. If
you do defeat the monster, all players involved get sent back to their home world. So you don't get to camp on the black hole and just wait for the new monsters to spawn.
And there's a couple free actions you might tap into. You can convert 2 of your production into a single of a different type. Or you can use a tactic card, discard it to reroll dice, or get other production based on what the card says. So those are free. They don't require that you use any of your production cubes to do so. And so when the 4th age is complete, the game comes to an end and you're going to calculate score. And there's numerous ways to score in this game. You're going to be looking at your public and your private objectives. Those are super critical and really where you should be focusing your time.
Definitely.
Right? And there's quests that you might come across in this game as you explore the galaxy. This will also net you points.
You'll also get additional victory points based upon the positions of your cubes on the domestic investment tracks, as well as for the wonders you've built. Lastly, you'll get a few more victory points for any unused production cubes you have on your board.
Indeed. Now, there are obviously numerous ways to break ties in this game, but really, in the end, the player with the most points is going to be the ultimate explorer in the Silver River. All right, folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form. So keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now that said, I enjoyed the tech tree and building up my forces and going after the creature in the middle in Sagittarius A. Those are some of the things I really enjoyed, and there are lots of interesting choices to be made in this game.
Definitely, there really are. I like the fact that they did balance out the military, because even if you have a ton of military production to spin, you can't just cause your entire fleet to fly across the board in one turn. Right. You can only activate a fleet and move an appropriate number of squares once per turn. Now, it's not once per age, but once per turn. So you might need to spend multiple turns to move your fleet across the board, while other players are passing and getting some benefits for that. But that's the trade-off, is do you really mobilize your fleet and spend multiple turns, or do you maybe invest in something a little bit more peaceful?
Indeed. But ultimately, folks, if this looks like a game that would be of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support.
That's right.
So I think that's it from us.
Yep.
And until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.